Thomas Mitchell had been standing in the same position for over 4 hours. His black boots were perfectly polished, his red uniform pressed to perfection, his tall bearskin hat sat exactly where it should be on his head. The summer sun beat down mercilessly on the palace courtyard, and sweat rolled down his back beneath his heavy woolen uniform. But Thomas never moved a muscle. This was what it meant to be a Queen's Guard at Buckingham Palace. The tourists gathered around him in growing numbers as the day wore on. Children pointed and giggled, trying to make him smile or blink. Adults took countless photos, some even waving their hands directly in front of his face to test his dedication. A few bold visitors made silly faces or told jokes, hoping to crack his stone-like expression. Thomas remained motionless, his eyes fixed straight ahead, his rifle held at the perfect angle against his shoulder. Thomas was 28 years old, and had served in the British Army for 10 years, before earning his place among the elite guards who protected the royal family. He had survived 2 tours in Afghanistan, where he had learned the true meaning of discipline and sacrifice. Those experiences in the desert, watching over his fellow soldiers during long, dangerous nights, had prepared him for days like this. Standing still under the London sun was nothing compared to what he had endured overseas. The palace gates were always busy, but today seemed especially crowded. Tour groups from around the world stopped to stare at the guards, taking pictures and videos that would be shared on social media within minutes. Street performers played music nearby, adding to the festive atmosphere that surrounded the palace. Every day, vendors sold souvenirs and refreshments to the endless stream of visitors who came to catch a glimpse of royal life. Thomas had started his shift at 6 in the morning, just as the sun was beginning to rise over London. The changing of the guard ceremony wouldn't happen for another 3 hours, which meant he needed to maintain his position no matter what happened around him. His feet were beginning to ache in his boots, and his arms felt heavy from holding his rifle in the same position for so long. The wool uniform trapped heat against his body, making every minute feel like an hour under the blazing sun. A group of teenagers approached, speaking in what sounded like American accents. They were clearly on vacation, wearing bright t-shirts, and carrying large cameras. One of them, a boy with sandy hair, started making funny faces at Thomas, while his friends laughed and took pictures. They spent several minutes trying different tactics to get a reaction, from telling jokes to doing silly dances right in front of him. "I bet he's not even real," one of the girls said loudly. "Maybe he's just a wax figure or something. Nobody could stand that still for so long." Her friend disagreed. "No way. Look at his eyes. He's definitely real. But how does he do it? I couldn't stand still for 5 minutes, let alone ours." An elderly gentleman with a walking cane approached the group of teenagers. He wore a military pin on his jacket and carried himself with the dignity of someone who had served his country. "Young lady," he said to the girl who had called Thomas fake, "this guard is very real. What he's doing requires incredible discipline and training. These men and women are among the finest soldiers in the world." The teenagers looked surprised and a bit embarrassed. The old veteran continued, "I served in the Royal Navy for 30 years, and I can tell you that standing guard like this is one of the most challenging duties a soldier can perform. It requires mental strength as much as physical endurance." Thomas appreciated the veteran's words, though he couldn't show it. He had heard similar comments from former military personnel who understood what he was going through. The public often saw the guards as tourist attractions, but they were elite soldiers who had earned their positions through years of rigorous training and service. As the morning turned to afternoon, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the temperature continued to rise. Thomas could feel his shirt sticking to his skin beneath his uniform, and his throat was getting dry. He had eaten a large breakfast and drunk plenty of water before his shift began. Knowing he wouldn't have another chance for hours, this was part of the job. He had accepted it willingly when he chose to serve as a Queen's Guard. A family with small children stopped nearby. Thomas could hear the parents explaining to their kids about the guards and why they stood so still. The mother was telling her daughter about the history of the palace and the important job the guards performed in protecting the royal family. The little girl, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, listened with wide eyes full of wonder and curiosity. "Mummy, doesn't his head hurt with that big hat?" the child asked innocently. Her mother smiled. "I'm sure it gets heavy, sweetheart, but he's very strong and brave. These guards are special soldiers who protect the queen and her family. The conversation reminded Thomas of why he had chosen this path. It wasn't just about standing still or looking impressive in a uniform. He was part of a tradition that stretched back hundreds of years, serving as a living symbol of British heritage and dedication to duty. Every tourist who stopped to look at him, every child who asked questions about his role, was learning about the values of service, discipline, and honor that he represented. The palace bells chimed noon, marking 6 hours since Thomas had taken his position. His legs felt like concrete pillars, and his shoulders ached from holding his rifle, but his face remained expressionless. He had trained for moments like this, learning to push through physical discomfort and maintain his focus no matter what. Distractions surrounded him. What Thomas didn't know was that someone very special had been watching him from one of the palace windows. Princess Charlotte, the young daughter of Prince William, had noticed the guard standing in the courtyard and had been observing his dedication with growing fascination and concern. Princess Charlotte pressed her small face against the cool glass of her bedroom window. Watching the red-uniformed guard who had been standing in the same spot since early morning. At 8 years old, she was curious about everything and asked endless questions that sometimes exhausted even her patient tutors. Today, her attention was completely focused on the motionless figure in the courtyard below. The princess had woken up early and noticed the guard, taking his position just as the sun was rising. Now, hours later, he hadn't moved even slightly. Charlotte found this both fascinating and deeply troubling. She couldn't understand how anyone could stand so perfectly still for such a long time, especially wearing such a heavy-looking uniform under the hot sun. Maria Charlotte called to her nanny, who was organizing the princess's clothes for the day. "Come look at this guard. He's been standing there forever and he hasn't moved at all. Don't you think he must be very tired?" Maria Gonzalez had been caring for royal children for 15 years. She was a kind woman from Spain who had become like a second mother to Charlotte and her brothers. Maria approached the window and looked down at the guard, understanding immediately why the princess was concerned. "Yes, Your Highness, that is Guard Mitchell. He is performing his duty to protect our family and the palace. The guards are very well-trained and strong, so they can stand for long periods." Charlotte frowned, pressing her nose against the glass again. "But Maria, look how hot it is outside. See how the other people are wearing light clothes and carrying water bottles? His uniform looks so thick and heavy, and that big hat must be terribly uncomfortable." The princess had always been exceptionally empathetic for her age. Even as a toddler, she would cry if she saw other children hurt or upset. Her parents had often remarked on her unusual sensitivity to the feelings and needs of others. This quality, which would serve her well in royal duties as she grew older, now made it impossible for her to ignore what she perceived as the guard's suffering. "Can't we give him some water?" Charlotte asked, turning from the window to look at Maria with earnest eyes. "Or maybe let him sit down for just a few minutes. I don't think anyone would mind." Maria smiled at the princess's compassion, but shook her head gently. "My dear, the guards have very strict rules about their duties. Guard Mitchell cannot accept anything from us or break his position until his shift ends. This is how they show their dedication to protecting your family." Charlotte didn't seem satisfied with this explanation. As she returned to the window and continued watching Thomas, who remained perfectly motionless despite the growing crowd of tourists around him. The princess could see people taking pictures and trying to make him react, which only increased her worry about his well-being. "It doesn't seem fair," Charlotte said quietly. "All those people are having fun and taking pictures, but he has to stand there and can't even smile or say hello. And look, Maria, some of those children are being quite rude to him." "Indeed, eh?" Group of young tourists had begun making increasingly silly gestures at Thomas, trying desperately to get any reaction from him. They were harmless, but persistent, and Charlotte could sense their behavior was somehow disrespectful to the dedicated guard. The princess had always been taught about duty and service by her parents and grandparents. She understood that being part of the royal family meant sometimes putting the needs of others before your own comfort. But seeing someone else endure discomfort for her family's protection made her feel responsible in a way she had never experienced before. "Maria, why don't the guards take turns more often? Couldn't they change every hour instead of standing for such a long time?" Maria sat down on the edge of Charlotte's bed, gesturing for the princess to join her. "Your Highness, the guards follow traditions that are hundreds of years old. These traditions show the world how seriously they take their job of protecting the royal family. When people see how dedicated and disciplined the guards are, it demonstrates the respect and honor that surrounds your family," Charlotte considered. This explanation but still seemed troubled. "I understand traditions are important, but shouldn't we also care about the people who serve us? Grandfather always says that being royal means thinking about others, not just ourselves." This comment surprised Maria with its wisdom. Charlotte was displaying a level of moral reasoning that was remarkable for her age. The nanny realized that the princess was grappling with complex ideas about duty, compassion, and leadership that even many adults struggle to understand. "You are right to be concerned, Your Highness. Your kind heart is one of your greatest qualities. But sometimes the best way to honor someone's service is to respect their commitment to their duty." Charlotte returned to the window once more, watching as Thomas continued his vigil under the increasingly harsh midday sun. She could see tourists coming and going, many of them seeking shade or buying cold drinks from nearby vendors. The contrast between their comfort and the guards' stoic endurance troubled her deeply. "I'm going to ask Papa about this," Charlotte announced suddenly. "He'll know what we can do to help." Before Maria could respond, Charlotte was already heading toward the door. The nanny hurried after her, knowing that once the princess made up her mind about something, she could be very determined to follow through with her plans. They found Prince William in his study, reviewing documents with his private secretary. Charlotte knocked politely on the door and waited for permission to enter, as she had been taught. "Papa, may I speak with you about something important?" Charlotte asked, her voice carrying the serious tone she used when discussing matters she considered significant. Prince William looked up from his papers and smiled at his daughter. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time for his children when they needed to talk about something that was troubling them. "Of course, Charlotte. What's on your mind?" The princess walked over to the window in her father's study, which also overlooked the courtyard where Thomas continued his duty. "Papa, that guard has been standing there all morning without moving. I've been watching him, and I'm very worried. Doesn't it hurt to stand still for so long? His uniform looks so hot and heavy." Prince William followed his daughter to the window and looked down at Thomas. He recognized the guard immediately, having seen him many times during official ceremonies and events. Thomas was known among the palace staff for his exceptional dedication and reliability. "You're right to notice his commitment, Charlotte. Guard Mitchell is performing one of the most important duties in our household. He's showing his dedication to protecting our family." Charlotte looked up at her father with worried eyes. "Papa, shouldn't we care about his comfort too?" "I know. Duty is important, but he looks like he might be suffering out there." Prince William knelt down to Charlotte's eye level, recognizing the genuine concern in his daughter's voice. This was one of those moments that could shape how she understood her role as a future member of the royal family. He needed to help. Her balance, compassion, with respect for duty and tradition. "Charlotte, your concern shows what a caring person you are, and that makes me very proud," Prince William said gently. "But let me tell you something about Guard Mitchell that might help you understand why he chooses to do this job." The prince led his daughter to a comfortable chair by the window, where they could both see Thomas continuing his steadfast vigil in the courtyard below. The guard remained perfectly motionless, despite the growing heat and the increasing number of tourists gathering around him. "Guard Mitchell volunteered for this position," Prince William explained. "He wasn't forced to become a Queen's Guard. He applied for this job because he wanted to serve our family and our country in this special way. Before he came here, he was a soldier who served in very dangerous places, protecting other soldiers and helping people in need." Charlotte listened intently, her eyes moving between her father's face and the figure of Thomas in the courtyard. "But Papa, even if he chose this job, doesn't that mean we should try to make it easier for him? If someone is working hard for us, shouldn't we help them?" Prince William smiled at his daughter's logic. Her question touched on one of the fundamental challenges of leadership: how to honor people's service while respecting their dignity and professionalism. "That's a wonderful question, Charlotte. And you're right that we should care about the people who serve us. But sometimes, the best way to honor someone's service is to trust that they can do their job well, and to respect their commitment to excellence. The princess frowned slightly, still not entirely convinced. But what if he gets sick from being in the sun so long? What if he faints or gets hurt? The guards are trained for exactly these conditions, her father explained patiently. They know how to prepare their bodies and minds for long periods of duty. They eat special foods, drink extra water before their shifts, and practice standing still for hours during their training. And there are other guards nearby who watch to make sure everyone stays safe. Prince William pointed toward another area of the courtyard where Charlotte could see additional guards positioned at different posts. See those other guards? They're all watching each other. If Guard Mitchell needed help, they would assist him immediately. But he's trained for this, and he's proud of his ability to perform his duty so well. Charlotte was beginning to understand, but her compassionate nature still made her worry. I just wish there was something we could do to show him we appreciate what he's doing. All those tourists are taking pictures of him like he's a statue, but he's a real person with feelings. This comment struck Prince William as particularly insightful. His 8-year-old daughter had identified something that many adults missed. The humanity of the people who served the royal family often got lost in the spectacle and tradition surrounding their roles. You know what, Charlotte? You've given me an excellent idea. There is something we can do, but it has to be done in the right way, at the right time, so that we respect both his duty and his dignity. Charlotte's eyes brightened immediately. What can we do, Papa? I want to help. Prince William stood up and walked back to his desk, where he picked up his phone. I'm going to call Captain Reynolds, who is in charge of all the guards. We're going to arrange something special, but it has to wait until Guard Mitchell's shift is over. Can't interrupt his duty, but we can show our appreciation afterward. The princess clapped her hands together excitedly. What are we going to do? Can I help? Yes, you can definitely help, Prince William said, already dialing the number. But first, I want you to understand something important about what we're planning. When we show appreciation for someone's service, we need to do it in a way that honors their professionalism. We can't treat them like they need to be rescued because that would suggest they can't handle their job. Charlotte nodded seriously, understanding that this was an important lesson about leadership and respect. Prince William spoke briefly with Captain Reynolds, explaining his daughter's concern and his idea for recognizing Guard Mitchell's dedication. The captain was immediately supportive, having noticed the princess watching from the window earlier in the day. Captain Reynolds says that Guard Mitchell has been one of his best guards for 3 years. Prince William told Charlotte after hanging up, he's never missed a day of duty, and he's always been professional and dedicated. The captain thinks our idea is perfect. Charlotte bounced slightly in her chair with excitement. What we're going to do? Well, first we need to wait for his shift to end in about an hour. Then we're going to invite Guard Mitchell to join us for tea in the garden. But not just regular tea. We're going to have Cook prepare his favorite foods, and we're going to present him with a special recognition for his outstanding service. The princess's eyes grew wide. We're going to have tea with him? Really? Yes. But remember, Charlotte, this isn't because we felt sorry for him standing in the sun. This is because we want to honor his exceptional dedication and service. There's a big difference between those two things. Charlotte thought about this distinction carefully. So we're not helping him because he can't do his job. We're celebrating him because he does his job so well. Exactly right, Prince William said. Proudly, you understand perfectly. When people serve us with such dedication, the royal family has a responsibility to acknowledge their excellence and show our gratitude. The princess turned back to the window, looking at Thomas with new understanding. Instead of seeing someone who needed to be rescued, she now saw someone whose commitment and strength deserved recognition and respect. Papa, will Guard Mitchell be surprised? I think he'll be very surprised and very honored. Guards don't usually get invited to have tea with the royal family, but exceptional service deserves exceptional recognition. Charlotte spent the next hour helping her father and the palace staff prepare for their surprise. She helped choose the menu, picked flowers from the garden for the table, and even wrote a small note thanking Guard Mitchell for his service. Time approached for Thomas's shift to end, and their surprise to begin. Thomas Mitchell could feel every muscle in his body screaming for relief. 7 hours had passed since he had taken his position at the palace gate, and the afternoon sun was now at its strongest. His heavy woolen uniform clung to his body, soaked, with perspiration that he couldn't wipe away. The tall bearskin hat felt like it weighed twice its normal weight, pressing down on his head with increasing intensity as the hours dragged on. His throat was parched, and he could taste salt from the sweat that had trickled down his face earlier. The rifle in his hands felt heavier with each passing minute, and his shoulders ached from maintaining the same position for so long. His feet, encased in the tight-fitting ceremonial boots, had gone from pain to numbness and back to a throbbing ache that seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. But Thomas never wavered. His face remained expressionless, his eyes fixed straight ahead, his posture perfect. This was what he had trained for during years of military service. This was what separated the Queen's Guards from ordinary soldiers, the ability to endure discomfort and maintain absolute discipline no matter what challenges they faced. The crowd of tourists around him had grown throughout the day. At times, there were so many people gathered near his post that the palace police had to encourage them to move along to prevent overcrowding. Children continued to try various tactics to make him react, while adults debated among themselves whether the guards were even real people. A group of university students from Germany had spent nearly an hour testing Thomas's resolve. They spoke loudly about British traditions, took countless selfies with him in the background, and even tried speaking to him in multiple languages. Through it all, Thomas remained as still as a statue, giving them no reaction whatsoever. "I still say he's not real," one of the students insisted to her friends. Nobody could stand that still for this long. "It's impossible." Her professor, who was leading their study abroad group, overheard her comment and approached the group. "Actually, Elena, these guards are very real and highly trained soldiers. What you're witnessing is the result of years of discipline and dedication to duty. The Queen's Guards are among the most elite soldiers in the British military." The professor explained to his students about the rigorous selection process for becoming a Queen's Guard and the intense training they underwent. He told them about the Guards' military backgrounds and their role in protecting the royal family, helping the young people understand that they weren't watching a tourist attraction, but rather witnessing a demonstration of professional military excellence. Thomas appreciated the professor's explanation, though he couldn't show it. Throughout his years of service, he had encountered many people who understood and respected what the Guards did, and their support meant more than they could know. These positive interactions helped balance out the occasional rudeness or misunderstanding from visitors who didn't appreciate the significance of his role. As the afternoon wore on, Thomas began to notice a pattern in the crowd. People would approach him with skepticism or amusement. But after watching him for several minutes, their expressions would change to something approaching awe or respect. There was something powerful about witnessing such unwavering discipline and dedication that seemed to touch even the most cynical observers. A family from Japan spent a long time near Thomas's position, with the father explaining to his young sons about the importance of duty and honor in both British and Japanese cultures. The man spoke quietly about samurai traditions and how the concept of service above self existed in many cultures around the world. The two boys listened respectfully, occasionally glancing at Thomas with new understanding in their eyes. An elderly, a woman from Wales approached Thomas around mid-afternoon. She walked slowly with the aid of a cane, and Thomas could see from his peripheral vision that she was studying his face intently. After several minutes of silent observation, she spoke in a voice loud enough for others nearby to hear. "Young man, I want you to know that my husband served in the Welsh Guards for 25 years. We'd be proud to see the dedication and discipline you're showing today. Thank you for your service to our country and our royal family." The woman's words carried special weight because she clearly understood what Thomas was going through. She wasn't a tourist seeking entertainment, but someone who had lived with a professional soldier and knew the sacrifices that military service required. Her acknowledgement of his dedication gave Thomas a surge of inner strength that helped him push through the growing physical discomfort. Thomas's mind wandered briefly to his own family, as it often did during these long shifts. His parents had been worried when he first told them he wanted to apply for the Queen's Guard position. They understood it was a great honor, but they also knew how demanding the role would be. His mother had cried when she first saw him in his ceremonial uniform, overwhelmed with pride and concern in equal measure. His younger sister had teased him about becoming a living statue for tourists, but he knew she was proud of his achievement. She often bragged to her friends about her brother who protected the royal family, conveniently leaving out the part about standing motionless for hours in all kinds of weather. The physical challenges of the job were just one aspect of being a Queen's Guard. Thomas also had to maintain perfect mental focus throughout his shift, staying alert for any potential security threats while ignoring the constant distractions from tourists and street performers. It was a delicate balance between being approachable enough to represent the royal family well while remaining vigilant and professional. A street musician had set up near Thomas's post earlier in the day, playing traditional British songs on an acoustic guitar. The music was pleasant and helped pass the time, but it also added another layer of sensory input that Thomas had to process while maintaining his focus on his primary duties. As the hours passed, Thomas noticed that the quality of light was beginning to change. The harsh midday sun was gradually giving way to the softer light of late afternoon. His shift would end in less than 2 hours, and then he could finally rest, rehydrate, and recover from the physical strain of the day. But even as he looked forward to the end of his shift, Thomas felt a deep sense of pride in what he was accomplishing. Every minute he stood at his post was a minute that the royal family could feel secure in their home. Every hour of his vigil was a demonstration to the world of the dedication and professionalism that surrounded Britain's most important family. He thought about the young Princess Charlotte, whom he had occasionally seen at palace events. She always seemed kind and curious, asking questions about everything around her. Thomas wondered if she ever noticed the guards who worked so hard to keep her family safe, or if they were simply part of the background of her daily life. Thomas didn't know was that Princess Charlotte had been watching him for most of the day, and that his dedication had inspired a plan that would surprise everyone, including himself. Captain Reynolds approached Thomas just as the palace clock tower chimed 4 o'clock. The captain's arrival signaled that Thomas's 8-hour shift was finally coming to an end. After standing motionless for so long, the prospect of being able to move again felt like the greatest gift imaginable. "Guard Mitchell," Captain Reynolds said in a low voice, "maintain your position for just a few more minutes. We have a special situation developing that requires your continued presence." Thomas felt a slight concern at these words. Special situations usually meant security issues or unexpected royal movements that could extend his duty time indefinitely. His body was already pushed to its limits, but he would stand for as long as necessary if his service was needed. The captain must have sensed Thomas's worry, because he added quietly, "Don't be concerned, Mitchell. This is a positive development, but I need you to maintain your professionalism for just a little longer." Within minutes, Thomas noticed unusual activity around the palace entrance. Palace staff members were moving with purpose, and he could see additional security personnel taking positions that weren't part of the normal protocols. Something significant was definitely happening. God. But Thomas remained at attention. Trusting that his superiors would explain when appropriate, Princess Charlotte appeared at the palace entrance. Walking alongside her father, Prince William, she was dressed in a beautiful blue dress and wore a small tiara that caught the afternoon sunlight. Thomas had seen the princess many times during official events, but her presence during his guard duty was completely unexpected. The crowd of tourists immediately recognized Princess Charlotte and Prince William, causing an excited buzz of conversation. In a flurry of camera activity, people began pushing forward to get better views and photographs, but the additional security personnel maintained order while allowing the royal family to proceed with whatever they had planned. Prince William approached Thomas's position with Princess Charlotte walking beside him. The prince's expression was warm and respectful, while the princess looked both excited and slightly nervous. Thomas remained at attention, unsure of what protocol to follow in this unprecedented situation. "Guard Mitchell," Prince William said. "Clearly, by order of Her Majesty the Queen, you are hereby relieved of your current duty assignment." These formal words meant that Thomas could finally move and speak. But he was so surprised by the royal family's presence that he hardly knew how to react. He carefully lowered his rifle and came to attention in the standard military posture for addressing superior officers. "Your Royal Highness," Thomas said, his voice slightly hoarse from hours of silence. Princess Charlotte stepped forward, looking up at Thomas with bright, curious eyes. "Guard Mitchell, I'm Princess Charlotte. I've been watching you from my window all day, and I wanted to meet you because you've been so brave and strong standing here for so long." Thomas was stunned by the princess's words.
Ow.
In all his years of service, he had never imagined that a member of the royal family had been observing his daily duties, or that his work had made any impression on them personally. "Your Royal Highness," Thomas replied, "it has been my honor and privilege to serve your family. Thank you for your kind words." Prince William smiled at the interaction between his daughter and the guard. "Guard Mitchell, Princess Charlotte noticed your dedication today and was concerned about your welfare." Her compassion led to a conversation about duty, service, and how we should honor those who serve with such distinction. The princess nodded enthusiastically. "Papa taught me that the best way to show appreciation isn't to feel sorry for someone, but to celebrate how well they do their job. So we wanted to invite you to have tea with us in the palace garden." Thomas felt overwhelmed by this unexpected honor. Queen's guards occasionally received formal commendations or awards, but being personally invited to tea by members of the royal family was almost unheard of. His years of military training had prepared him for many situations, but not for this kind of gracious recognition. "Your Royal Highnesses, I am deeply honored by your invitation," Thomas said, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "I would be privileged to join you." Princess Charlotte clapped her hands together excitedly. "Wonderful. We have everything prepared in the garden. Cook made special sandwiches and cakes, and I picked flowers for the table myself." The crowd of tourists was watching this unprecedented scene with fascination. Many of them had been observing Thomas throughout the day, and now they were witnessing something that would likely never happen again. Cameras and phones captured every moment as the royal family personally honored one of their guards. Captain Reynolds approached the group, carrying a small wooden box that Thomas recognized as the type used for military decorations. "Guard Mitchell," the captain announced formally, "in recognition of your exceptional service and dedication, His Royal Highness Prince William has approved a special commendation for outstanding duty performance." Prince William took the box from Captain Reynolds and opened it to reveal a beautiful medal with the royal coat of arms. "Guard Mitchell, this commendation recognizes not just your service today, but your consistent excellence throughout your 3 years as a Queen's Guard. Your dedication exemplifies the finest traditions of military service to the crown." Thomas stood at attention as Prince William pinned the medal to his uniform. The weight of the honor was almost overwhelming, not just the physical medal, but the recognition that his service had been noticed and valued at the highest levels. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am deeply grateful for this recognition and for the opportunity to serve your family." Princess Charlotte tugged gently on her father's sleeve. "Papa, can we go have tea now? I want to ask Guard Mitchell about being a soldier and protecting people." Prince William laughed at his daughter's eagerness. "Of course, Charlotte, Guard Mitchell. If you're ready, we have a lovely table prepared in the rose garden. Captain Reynolds has arranged for your replacement to take over your duties, so you can relax and enjoy yourself." As they walked toward the palace garden, Thomas felt as though he was living in a dream. The physical exhaustion from his 8-hour shift was still present, but it was completely overshadowed by the incredible honor of this personal recognition from the royal family. The garden was beautifully arranged with a small table set for afternoon tea. Fine china cups and plates were arranged alongside an impressive selection of sandwiches, scones, and pastries. Fresh flowers that Princess Charlotte had picked herself decorated the table, adding a personal touch that made the formal setting feel warm and welcoming. Please sit down, Guard Mitchell, Princess Charlotte said, gesturing to a chair. You must be very tired from standing for so long. Would you like some water first? Papa says you probably haven't had anything to drink. All day? Thomas gratefully accepted a glass of cool water, drinking it slowly to avoid making himself sick after hours without hydration. The relief of sitting down and being able to relax his muscles was incredible, but even more meaningful was the genuine care and respect being shown by the royal family as they began to enjoy their tea together. Princess Charlotte peppered Thomas with questions about his military service, his training as a Queen's Guard, and his experiences protecting the royal family. Her genuine curiosity and appreciation made Thomas feel truly valued for his service, in a way that formal ceremonies and commendations never could. A moment that changed everything. Final part as the afternoon tea continued in the palace garden. Thomas found himself in the most extraordinary conversation of his military career. Princess Charlotte's questions ranged from practical matters about his uniform and training to deeper inquiries about what it felt like to serve others and protect people he cared about. Guard Mitchell, Charlotte asked, carefully balancing a small cucumber sandwich on her plate, when you're standing there for so long, what do you think about? Don't you get bored? Thomas smiled, touched by her genuine interest. Your Royal Highness, I think about many things. Remember my training and the other soldiers I've served with. I think about the importance of the job I'm doing, protecting your family and representing the traditions of our country. And sometimes, he admitted with a slight chuckle, I do mathematical calculations in my head to keep my mind sharp. Prince William leaned forward with interest. What kind of calculations? Well, Your Royal Highness, I might count the number of tourists who approach, or calculate how many steps they take, or figure out the angles of the shadows as the sun moves across the courtyard. It helps me stay alert and focused while maintaining my position. Princess Charlotte's eyes widened. That's brilliant. You're like a soldier and a mathematician at the same time. The conversation continued for over an hour, with Thomas sharing stories from his military service and his experiences as a Queen's Guard. He told them about the pride he felt when he first put on the uniform, the challenges of the rigorous training program, and the deep satisfaction that came from serving something greater than himself. Princess Charlotte, Thomas said as they finished their tea, may I tell you something important? The young princess nodded eagerly. Today, knowing that you were watching from your window and that you cared about my well-being, that made standing in the sun for 8 hours feel like a privilege rather than a hardship. When people we serve show genuine appreciation for our work, it gives us strength we didn't know we had. Charlotte looked thoughtful for a moment. Guard Mitchell, I learned something important today too. Papa taught me that the best way to honor someone isn't to feel sorry for them, but to celebrate how excellent they are at their job. I was worried about you at first, but now I understand that you're incredibly strong and skilled, and that's what makes you special. Prince William watched this exchange with evident pride in his daughter's growing understanding of leadership and service. Charlotte, what you've learned today about recognizing excellence and showing appreciation, those are qualities that will serve you well throughout your life, especially as a member of our family. As the afternoon began to fade into evening, Captain Reynolds approached their table. Your Royal Highnesses, Guard Mitchell, I apologize for interrupting, but we need to begin preparing for the evening shift change. Thomas stood and came to attention, but Prince William gestured for him to remain relaxed. Hey, Guard Mitchell, before you go, I want you to know that this afternoon has been as meaningful for us as I hope it has been for you. Compassion led to a wonderful reminder for all of us about the importance of recognizing and celebrating the people who serve with dedication. Princess Charlotte jumped up from her chair and approached Thomas with a small, wrapped package. I have something for you, Guard Mitchell. I made it myself. Thomas carefully unwrapped the gift to find a hand-drawn picture of himself in his red uniform and bearskin hat, standing proudly at his post. At the bottom of the drawing, Charlotte had written, in her careful child's handwriting, "Thank you. For protecting my family, you are a hero." Princess Charlotte, the tough soldier who had stood motionless for 8 hours, felt tears forming in his eyes. Your Royal Highness, this is the most meaningful gift I have ever received. I will treasure it always. I drew you smiling, Charlotte said proudly. Because even though you have to be serious when you're on duty, I wanted to remember that you're a happy person underneath. As Thomas prepared to leave, Prince William shook his hand firmly. Guard. Mitchell, your service exemplifies the very best of British military tradition. Thank you for your dedication. Not just today, but every day you put on that uniform. Thank you, Your Royal Highness, for this incredible honor. And Princess Charlotte, thank you for reminding me why this work matters. I will never forget this. Afternoon. As Thomas walked back toward the palace, still carrying Charlotte's drawing, he reflected on how a single act of compassion from a young princess had transformed his understanding of his own service. He had always taken pride in his duties as a queen's guard, but now he understood more deeply how his daily dedication touched the lives of the people he protected. The tourists who had watched him all day were still gathered around the palace gates, many of them talking excitedly about the unprecedented scene they had witnessed. Children who had tried to make him smile earlier now looked at him with new respect, understanding that they had been in the presence of someone truly dedicated to his calling. Word of Princess Charlotte's compassionate gesture in the royal families. Recognition of Guard Mitchell spread quickly through social media and news outlets around the world. The story became a symbol of how genuine leadership involves recognizing and celebrating the people who serve with quiet dedication. For Thomas, returning to his regular duties as a Queen's Guard would never be quite the same. He would still stand motionless for hours, still maintain perfect discipline under all conditions, and still protect the royal family with unwavering dedication. But now he would do so with the knowledge that his service was not only noticed, but deeply appreciated by those he served. Princess Charlotte continued to wave at the guards from her window each morning, and they would occasionally catch her eye and give her the slightest nod of acknowledgement. A small breach of protocol that everyone agreed was perfectly appropriate given the circumstances. Years later, Princess Charlotte had grown into her role as a senior member of the royal family. She would often speak about the lessons she learned that day in the palace garden. She would tell audiences about the importance of recognizing excellence in service and how a simple gesture of appreciation could transform someone's entire perspective on their work. And Thomas Mitchell, now a senior guard and trainer of new recruits, would share the story of Princess Charlotte's compassion as an example of how true leadership begins with genuine care for the people who serve. He would show them Charlotte's drawing, now carefully framed in his home, as a reminder that their daily dedication to duty was noticed, appreciated, and honored by those they protected. The moment that began with a young princess's concern for a guard standing in the sun had become something much more significant, a demonstration of how compassion, respect, and recognition could bridge the gap between those who serve and those who are served, creating connections that would last a lifetime in the end. Thomas realized that his 8 hours of standing perfectly still had led to the most important lesson of his military career, that true service is not just about enduring hardship or following orders, but about creating meaningful connections between people who care about something greater than themselves. And sometimes, the most profound recognition comes not from formal ceremonies or official commendations, but from the genuine appreciation of a young person who simply noticed that someone was working hard on her behalf. The story of Guard Mitchell and Princess Charlotte became a cherished part of palace lore, reminding everyone who heard it that acts of compassion and recognition, no matter how small, have the power to transform lives and strengthen the bonds that hold communities together.